It had been a long time since anyone saw Kody Brown like this. No speeches. No raised voice. No confident stare into the camera. Just a man sitting in a chair, hands shaking, eyes welling with tears, finally admitting something he's spent decades avoiding. "I failed," he said quietly. "I failed as a father." For a moment, even the room seemed to stop breathing. This wasn't the Kody viewers had come to know over the years, the loud, stubborn, proud leader of the Brown family. This was a man stripped of defenses, forced to face the truth that had been chasing him for years. The interviewer leaned in gently and asked, "When you say failure, what do you mean, Kody?" Kody swallowed hard. You could see him searching for the right words. "I thought I was doing God's work," he finally said. "I thought I was leading a family. But all I did was lead everyone into heartbreak, including myself." He wasn't angry. He wasn't defensive. Just broken. For years, fans have watched him fight with his wives, lose touch with his children, and cling to control as his family fell apart. But this was the first time he admitted it out loud. And it wasn't just television drama anymore. This was a man realizing that his children, the ones he built his world around, had stopped calling, stopped visiting, and stopped needing him. "They don't talk to me anymore," he whispered. "And I don't blame them. It's the kind of pain only parents can truly understand, that heavy silence where love used to be." He stared down at his hands as tears fell, one by one. The room around him went still. Even the crew didn't move. No one dared to interrupt. Kody Brown, the man who once stood tall at the center of 4 marriages, who believed love could multiply instead of divide, was now alone in front of millions, finally facing the truth. In homes across America, longtime viewers felt a strange mix of sadness and frustration. For over a decade, they had watched the Browns try to build a family out of faith and ambition, only to see it splinter under the weight of jealousy, exhaustion, and pride. But this time was different. On social media, fans were writing things like, "I never thought I'd say it, but I actually feel sorry for him." Another replied, "It's too late for tears. He's crying for himself, not the family he hurt." Still, for many people, especially parents and grandparents watching at home, it was hard not to feel something. Because deep down, they could see what was really happening. Kody Brown wasn't crying for lost fame or money. He was crying for time. Time he couldn't get back. Time he spent chasing control instead of connection. In the days before this interview, insiders said Kody had been restless, unable to sleep. The tension behind the scenes of sister wives had reached a boiling point. Christine's new marriage was making headlines, a story of renewal, of finding happiness again. Janelle was thriving independently, surrounded by her children. Even Meri, after years of being sidelined, had found peace outside the shadow of polygamy. Meanwhile, Kody remained in the same place, same house, same regrets, same questions. "They all moved on," he said softly. "And I'm still here, wondering how I became the villain in everyone's story." That sentence broke something in him. You could hear it. The tremble in his voice, the weariness of a man who had finally run out of explanations. Robyn, his last remaining wife, reportedly watched the interview off camera, her eyes filled with tears. "She's scared," said one insider. "Not of losing Kody, but of losing what's left of the story they built together." Because that's the truth of it, the Brown family's life wasn't just private anymore. It was public. Shared. Filmed. Edited. Consumed by millions. And when the cameras stopped rolling, what was left was real pain, real loneliness, and a father trying to rebuild bridges that might already be gone. For many viewers, it wasn't just entertainment anymore. It was a mirror, a reflection of how pride can turn love into distance, how the need to be right can destroy what truly matters. Kody's words, quiet and cracked with emotion, landed heavy. "I wanted to build something that would last forever. But somewhere along the way, I stopped listening. I wanted control more than connection. And when you do that, you lose everything." In that moment, you could almost forget the years of arguments, the televised chaos, the shouting matches. Because for once, the noise was gone, and all that was left was truth. He looked straight into the camera. "If any of my kids are watching," he said, voice barely above a whisper, "I'm sorry." The screen cut to black. And across America, people sat quietly in their living rooms, many wiping away tears they didn't expect to shed. Because no matter what they thought of Kody Brown, they recognized the look in his eyes. It was the look of a father realizing it's too late to undo the past. The interview aired on a quiet Sunday night. Most of the Brown family had heard about it, but few were ready to actually watch it. For years, Kody Brown's children had grown used to their father's explanations, his long talks about faith, leadership, and disappointment. But this time, there were no excuses. Just regret. When the episode ended, the silence that followed was heavier than any argument could have been. One by one, the children reacted. Some publicly. Some privately. And each response painted a picture of just how deep the fractures in this family had become. Janelle's oldest son, Logan, reportedly stayed quiet for several hours after watching the clip online. He texted his mother only 2 words, "He knows." To outsiders, that might sound simple. But for anyone who's ever carried a strained relationship with a parent, those 2 words carry years of history, a lifetime of moments when you wanted to hear someone finally admit they were wrong. According to people close to the family, Janelle didn't watch it right away. She waited until late that night, when the house was quiet. She turned on the episode, sat on her couch, and listened. When Kody said, "I failed as a father," she covered her mouth with her hand. Tears filled her eyes, not out of anger, but because she knew he was finally saying what needed to be said, even if it came too late to fix what had already broken. "She's not bitter anymore," said one friend. "She's just sad." She wanted him to say those words 5 years ago. Back when their kids still hoped for a call on birthdays or holidays. But she also knows that sometimes, people only face the truth after they've lost everything. Christine's reaction was more complicated. She had moved on, remarried, and was focused on building peace. But when she heard Kody's words, she reportedly stopped what she was doing, sat down, and whispered, "Finally." She didn't celebrate his pain. She didn't gloat. Christine understood heartbreak, she had lived through years of it. In a later podcast, when asked about the interview, she said softly, "It takes courage to admit failure. I wish he'd found that courage sooner. But if this means my kids get a more honest father, I'll take it." Her tone wasn't angry. It was weary, but hopeful. A woman who had learned to let go, but still believed that healing, even in small ways, was possible. Then came the younger kids, the ones who grew up with more cameras than conversations. They didn't post online. They didn't issue statements. But sources close to the family said a few of them quietly reached out. A simple message. A text. One said, "I saw your interview. Thanks for saying it." Another added, "It hurt to hear, but I appreciate that you said it out loud." For Kody, even those short replies meant the world. After years of distance, even a single message felt like a bridge being rebuilt, however fragile. Not all responses were kind, though. Paydon, Christine's son, didn't hold back. He went live on Instagram the next morning, his expression stern. "You don't get to cry on camera after years of ignoring your kids," he said. "You can't ask for sympathy from strangers when you wouldn't show up for your own family." His words hit hard, and they echoed what many fans were already thinking. Because while Kody's breakdown touched hearts, it also opened old wounds. For every person who felt empathy, there were just as many who felt frustration. Robyn's reaction was perhaps the most surprising of all. In private, she reportedly defended Kody, saying he was just trying to be honest, but in public, she stayed silent. A source close to the couple claimed Robyn spent hours comforting him after the interview, but also reminded him, "This doesn't fix anything. You have to show it, not just say it." That struck him deeply. Because Robyn was right, tears alone don't rebuild trust. Still, it was the first time in a long while that Kody wasn't trying to justify himself. He wasn't blaming anyone else. He was just sorry. And in a family where pride had built walls higher than love could climb, that apology, imperfect as it was, mattered. The fans noticed, too. Across Facebook and Reddit, longtime viewers who had sworn off the show found themselves talking again. One comment read, "Maybe Kody's finally realizing what matters most." Another said, "It's sad that it took him losing everyone to see it." People weren't just reacting to a TV moment anymore. They were seeing a reflection of something deeply human, the realization that love, once neglected, doesn't wait forever. And yet, not everyone believed the tears were real. A few viewers insisted it was all part of the show, a calculated attempt to win sympathy. But others, especially older fans, saw something different. They saw a man whose pride had finally collapsed under the weight of regret. Because when you've raised children, you know that moment, the one when silence replaces laughter, when the phone stops ringing, when you start wondering where you went wrong. For many parents watching, Kody's confession wasn't just his story. It was theirs. In the days after the broadcast, Janelle reportedly told a friend, "He can't undo the years, but maybe he can start showing up for the future." Christine, when asked by a reporter, smiled faintly and said, "It's never too late to try to be better. Just don't expect applause for it." Even Meri, who's been through more heartbreak than most, said on social media, "Accountability is painful. But growth never happens without it." Those simple, measured responses spoke volumes. No yelling. No bitterness. Just quiet truth, the kind that comes from people who have finally found peace in moving forward. And as for Kody? He reportedly stayed off social media entirely. No statements, no clarifications. He spent most of that week alone in Flagstaff, attending church quietly, taking long drives, and visiting the few children who would still see him. Neighbors said they often saw him walking near the edge of Coyote Pass, the land that was supposed to unite the family, but instead became the symbol of its collapse. Maybe he was remembering. Maybe he was grieving. Maybe, for once, he was listening. Whatever it was, this time, there were no cameras. No audience. No script. Just Kody Brown, a father trying, however late, to understand what his family had been trying to tell him for years. When the cameras stopped rolling that day, something unexpected happened. For the first time in years, the production crew didn't rush to pack up or check sound levels. They just sat quietly. Even the crew, people who had filmed countless arguments, heartbreaks, and reconciliations, seemed shaken by what they had witnessed. The director reportedly turned to his assistant and whispered, "Did you feel that?" Because what they had captured wasn't just reality TV anymore. It was raw humanity, unscripted, unfiltered, and heavy. The man they had filmed for over a decade, the patriarch who demanded control of every scene, was finally silent. And in that silence, everyone in the room could feel the truth. One producer later said in an interview off record, "When Kody started crying, no one knew whether to keep filming or stop. It wasn't dramatic, it was real. You could tell he wasn't acting." That clip, the one that aired, was only a fraction of what happened. According to crew members, Kody sat in that chair long after the cameras turned off. He wiped his face with his sleeve, leaned forward, and said, "I don't even know who I am anymore." The room went quiet. No one wanted to break that moment. Robyn eventually walked over, put her hand on his shoulder, and whispered something only he could hear. He nodded, but didn't look up. It wasn't the kind of comfort that fixes things, more like the touch you give someone who's just realized how deep the damage really goes. Behind the scenes, TLC executives were already on the phone. They had hours of footage, much of it too personal, too fragile, too honest to air. One insider described the debate inside the editing room. "We wanted to show the truth, but we also didn't want to humiliate him. There's a fine line between storytelling and cruelty." In the end, they chose restraint. They cut out the quiet minutes, the long pauses, and Kody's whispered apology to the crew. What viewers saw was just the polished version, the highlight reel of heartbreak. What they didn't see was the silence that followed. After filming wrapped, Robyn reportedly stayed behind with the producers. She asked them not to show one particular exchange, a short argument that unfolded after the cameras stopped rolling. Sources said Kody, still emotional, began talking about redemption. He said he wanted to make things right and rebuild with everyone. But Robyn, exhausted and tearful, cut him off. "You've said that before," she told him. "You said that last year, and the year before that. When are you actually going to change?" Her voice cracked on that last word. Change. That moment never made it to air. It was too raw. Too real. But for those in the room, it was the truest exchange they'd ever filmed between them. Meanwhile, outside the studio, the ripple effect began. TLC's inbox filled with messages from fans who couldn't stop talking about the breakdown. Some offered compassion. Others offered judgment. But everyone agreed on one thing: the man who once seemed untouchable now looked human. Social media lit up overnight. Clips from the interview went viral on Facebook, TikTok, and Reddit. One comment read, "For the first time, I didn't see Kody Brown the polygamist. I saw a father who finally realized what he'd done." Another countered, "Too little, too late. He's crying because the cameras are still there. If he really cared, he'd stop filming and go fix his family." The debate didn't stop for days. Even major entertainment outlets picked up the story, running headlines like, "Kody Brown's emotional collapse, real regret or reality TV redemption?" Inside TLC, the executives saw opportunity. Ratings for the episode had already spiked. Producers began talking about how to continue the story, how to build a follow-up special around Kody's emotional reckoning. They discussed bringing in the older children for interviews, maybe even filming a family sit-down in the next season. But according to insiders, not everyone agreed. One senior editor warned, "This isn't entertainment anymore. These are real people. We can't keep asking them to bleed for the camera." Still, the network had a decision to make. The Browns were their longest-running family. And now, they were their most complicated. So while the world debated whether Kody's tears were real or rehearsed, TLC quietly started shaping the next chapter, a story about consequence, healing, and maybe redemption. Behind closed doors, Robyn was struggling too. Crew members noticed she cried after almost every filming session that month. "She's carrying the emotional weight of the whole family," one staffer said. "She's trying to hold him together, but she's falling apart too." At home, things were tense. The couple barely spoke some nights. Kody was quiet, withdrawn, pacing the house in silence. Robyn tried to console him, but her own patience was wearing thin. "She's angry," said one insider. "Angry at him, at the show, at the situation. But she's also trapped. If she leaves, it proves everyone else right. If she stays, she keeps reliving the pain." And so, like every season before, the Browns kept filming. Because even when the family fell apart, the cameras never stopped. In the editing room, one assistant producer reportedly said, "It's like watching the end of something sacred. Every tear feels final." But to the executives, it was something else entirely. It was television gold. The human drama that had built Sister Wives into a cultural phenomenon was now reaching its most personal, most painful, and most profitable chapter yet. While the world watched the edited version, the tears, the apology, the close-up, the truth remained hidden in the parts that never aired. The quiet arguments. The long silences. The sound of a man realizing that sometimes, the story you've been telling isn't the one you're actually living. That's what TLC didn't show. Not because they couldn't, but because maybe, for once, even television knew when to look away. Behind every public breakdown is a private one no one sees. And for Robyn Brown, that moment came not in front of cameras, but in the quiet of her living room, after everyone else had gone home. The house was silent that night. The Christmas lights still glowed faintly in the corner, a soft reminder of happier times. Outside, snow was falling, the kind of soft, steady snow that muffles the world and makes even pain feel distant for a few moments. Robyn sat alone on the couch, her phone buzzing with notifications, headlines, social media reactions, messages from relatives. But she didn't open any of them. She just stared at the blinking light on the screen, her hands trembling slightly, until finally she whispered to herself, "I can't do this anymore." For years, Robyn had been seen as the glue that held Kody together. The loyal wife. The peacemaker. The patient one. But inside, she was unraveling. She had watched her husband crumble on national television. She had heard the same confessions fans had heard, that he failed, that he lost everything. And even though she'd known those truths for a long time, hearing them said aloud, with tears, with regret, broke something inside her too. Robyn wasn't angry that he cried. She was angry that it took so long. "He waited until it was too late," she said later in a private conversation with a producer. "He waited until everyone had already walked away before realizing what he'd done." The producer, a woman who'd known the Browns for over a decade, nodded softly. They'd seen Robyn hold back tears on set before, but this time, she didn't hold back. She began to talk about the loneliness. The long nights when the house was quiet and Kody sat in his office, rewatching old footage of the family when they were still together. He doesn't sleep, she said. He just replays it all, the laughter, the dinners, the chaos. I think he's trying to find the moment everything went wrong. But the truth was, there wasn't one moment. It wasn't a single argument or decision. It was years of small hurts, left to grow. And Robyn had carried much of that weight, defending him publicly, comforting him privately, and now, bearing the collapse of a family that had once believed it was chosen by God to prove love could multiply. Her voice broke as she described watching him spiral. He walks around this house like a ghost. He says he wants forgiveness, but he doesn't know how to live in it. I keep trying to pull him out, but he just sinks deeper. For the first time, she admitted she didn't know if she still loved the man she'd married. Not because she hated him, but because the version of him she'd loved was gone. He used to be light, she said. He used to make people laugh. Now, everything is heavy. Every conversation feels like a goodbye. What made Robyn's breakdown different was that it wasn't about cameras or public image. It was about exhaustion, emotional, spiritual, and physical. She had become the last one standing, the loyal wife in a story that no longer had a hero. And the pressure to keep smiling, to keep pretending, had hollowed her out. Friends later said she barely left the house that week. She skipped filming days. She cried easily, often, and without warning. At one point, she called Christine, yes, Christine, the very woman who had once symbolized everything broken between them. Christine reportedly answered on the first ring. Robyn? I don't even know why I'm calling, Robyn said quietly. I just needed someone who understands what it's like to walk away. There was silence. Then Christine said gently, you don't have to walk away. But you do have to stop drowning to keep him afloat. Robyn started crying. Not polite crying, deep, chest-heaving sobs. The kind that come from years of holding everything in. That call lasted over an hour. Christine didn't scold or judge. She just listened. And for the first time in years, Robyn felt like someone saw her, not as Kody's wife, not as the symbol of his last marriage, but as a woman who was simply tired. After the call, Robyn reportedly sat outside on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, watching the snow fall. Her eyes were swollen, her face pale. But there was something different in her expression, not relief, exactly, but clarity. She realized she can't keep living like this, said a close friend. She's not ready to leave, but she's starting to see that staying the way things are isn't living either. Behind the scenes, TLC producers noticed the change too. Robyn, usually composed and polite on camera, began to withdraw. Her answers were shorter. Her smiles, thinner. During one interview segment, when asked about the future of her marriage, she paused for a full 10 seconds before answering. Then she said, I don't know. That single sentence made it into the final cut, and it spoke louder than any confession Kody had ever made. Because the audience could feel it. The woman who had once defended him to the end was now unsure if she had the strength to keep doing it. For the fans who'd followed her journey for over a decade, it was heartbreaking. Robyn had always seemed unshakable, steady, composed, spiritual. But now, her faith was cracked, her hope threadbare. Viewers began to notice the small things, the way she avoided eye contact, the way her laughter sounded forced, the way her shoulders slumped in every new scene. People began to ask online, is Robyn okay? Is she finally breaking? And in truth, she was. But not in the way tabloids wanted, not scandal, not betrayal. Just the slow, painful collapse of someone who had carried too much for too long. By the end of that month, Robyn had stopped appearing at public events. She turned down interviews, skipped photo shoots, and stayed home with her children. She said she needed quiet, a source explained. After all the noise, she just wanted peace. But peace was hard to find when your life was built on a camera lens. Even when she hid from the spotlight, the story followed her every headline, every clip, every reminder that she had once been part of something that now existed only in reruns. That night, alone on the couch, Robyn whispered a prayer. Not for fame. Not for the show. Not even for Kody. She prayed for strength, the strength to keep going, or the courage to finally stop pretending. And when she opened her eyes, she whispered softly to herself, maybe it's time to stop saving everyone else. In that quiet moment, the woman America had once called the favorite wife finally became something else, human. Every family has a symbol. For the Browns, that symbol was never a house or a wedding ring. It was land, 12 acres of Arizona earth called Coyote Pass. To anyone else, it looked like a quiet patch of desert, framed by red rocks and juniper trees. But to Kody Brown, it was supposed to be the dream that proved everything, that plural marriage could work, that faith could build a legacy, that family could live side by side in harmony. Instead, it became the battlefield where that dream died. When the Browns first bought Coyote Pass, the plan was simple. Each wife would have her own home. The children could visit freely. The family would share a central space, one large home or meeting area, where they'd gather for dinners, birthdays, and holidays. It sounded perfect in theory. But perfection rarely survives reality. The moment the land was divided on paper, so was the family. Christine was the first to sense it. She later said, "It felt like we weren't building something together. We were just separating with nicer boundaries." Janelle tried to stay optimistic, drawing sketches of her future home, talking about gardens and porches. But even she admitted, it started to feel less like a dream and more like a negotiation. And Meri, well, Meri never really saw herself there. She used to say, "You can't build peace on land that was bought with tension." She wasn't wrong. The years that followed turned Coyote Pass into more of a burden than a blessing. Property taxes piled up. Building permits stalled. And every time the family met to discuss progress, they left angrier than when they arrived. Eventually, Christine stopped showing up altogether. Janelle focused on her RV, parking it on the land for a while just to prove it could still mean something. And Meri quietly distanced herself. Only Kody and Robyn kept the dream alive, or tried to. Robyn used to drive out there with the kids, just to walk the dirt roads. She'd tell them, "Someday this will be ours. Someday, we'll all be together again." But even she stopped saying it eventually. By the time the family's marriages began collapsing, Coyote Pass had turned into a ghost. The land sat untouched, dry and empty, while the family drifted further apart. When Christine left in 2021, she took the first emotional step away from the property. When Janelle separated in 2022, she took the practical step, refusing to invest another cent into it. And when Meri finally walked away, the land lost its meaning entirely. Yet, Kody wouldn't let go. Even after the separations, he'd still talk about Coyote Pass as if it were sacred ground. He called it our family's promised land. He'd drive out there alone sometimes, standing in the wind, staring at the empty soil like it owed him something. It became a kind of obsession, not about property, but pride. To him, selling Coyote Pass meant admitting defeat. Admitting that the dream had died. Robyn, however, saw it differently. She saw it as an anchor, holding them to a past that no longer fit their lives. During one tense conversation off camera, she reportedly told Kody, "You're not trying to build a home anymore, Kody. You're trying to prove a point." That stung. Because she was right. The land that was supposed to bring unity had become a monument to everything he'd lost. Financially, it was a nightmare too. Property taxes alone reached tens of thousands of dollars each year. And without development, the land was draining their resources. TLC producers even approached them about filming an off-grid build series, showing the family trying to develop the property themselves. But the idea was quietly scrapped. One insider explained, no one wanted to go back there. The wives saw it as cursed. Even Robyn didn't want to step foot on that land anymore. For years, the family paid just enough to keep it, never selling, never building. It sat there, collecting dust, interest, and resentment. The real turning point came in early 2025, when Kody finally admitted to producers that the land was a dead dream. That confession, never aired in full, marked the end of an era. TLC insiders say the moment was somber. Kody stared out the window for a long time before saying softly, "We built our whole identity around something that was never real." He wasn't talking about dirt or deeds. He was talking about love, the kind that was supposed to multiply but instead dissolved under pressure. When the land finally sold later that year, it was bittersweet. Christine didn't want a dime from it. Meri took her portion quietly and left town for good. Janelle used hers to help her kids, and to put down roots somewhere peaceful. Kody, on the other hand, was devastated. To him, selling Coyote Pass wasn't just losing property. It was losing purpose. For over a decade, he'd told anyone who would listen that this land would unite the Browns for generations. Now, it was gone. Robyn described the day of the sale as quiet, like a funeral. She told friends, "We lost more than land that day. We lost the last piece of what made us us." Afterward, Kody reportedly drove out there one last time before handing over the keys. He parked his truck near the fence line, got out, and just stood there. No cameras. No crew. No words. A neighbor later said they saw him standing still for nearly half an hour, staring at the horizon. When he finally turned to leave, he knelt down, scooped up a handful of dirt, and held it in his palm before letting it fall through his fingers. That was it, the last chapter of a dream that had cost him his family, his fortune, and his faith in himself. For the viewers who've watched this saga unfold for over a decade, Coyote Pass isn't just a storyline. It's a metaphor. For promises made and broken. For pride mistaken as leadership. For love that tried to build something lasting, only to learn that some foundations can't hold. The Browns may have left that land behind, but its shadow lingers over every scene that follows. Because sometimes, what breaks a family isn't betrayal or distance. Sometimes, it's the dream that was too heavy for them to carry. It was a quiet morning in Flagstaff when the cameras returned to film again. The snow from the night before still blanketed the ground, soft and clean, as if the world itself was trying to start over. Inside the house, the crew began setting up lights and microphones. But Kody Brown wasn't ready. Not yet. He sat alone in the den, staring at a cup of coffee gone cold. His reflection in the window looked older, heavier, not just from time, but from everything he'd carried and lost along the way. When the director asked if he was ready to start, he didn't answer right away. Finally, he whispered, "Let's just do it. Let's tell the truth this time." The cameras rolled. But there was no script this time, no preset questions. Kody looked straight into the lens and began talking. Not like the confident patriarch of old. Not like the man who used to explain, justify, and defend every decision. He spoke like a man who had run out of excuses. "I thought I was leading a family," he began, his voice shaking slightly. "I thought I was doing God's work, keeping everyone together, teaching love, building something that would last forever." He paused, rubbing his temples before continuing. "But I see now. I was just managing control. I was so afraid of losing them that I made them want to leave." There was a long silence. Even the camera crew didn't move. Kody took a deep breath, his eyes red but steady. "I keep asking myself," he said, "why did Christine leave? Why did Janelle leave? Why did Meri stop trusting me? I used to blame them. I said they gave up. But I was the one who stopped listening." He leaned forward, clasping his hands together like a man in prayer. "You know, there's something I never said on camera before. When Christine told me she was leaving, I wanted to stop her. But I didn't because I was too proud. I thought if I let her go, she'd see what she lost. Instead, I'm the one who lost everything." That single line hit differently. It wasn't for the audience, it was for himself. He continued, his words slow, deliberate, like someone reliving years in a few minutes. "I used to tell the kids I was the protector. The man who kept the family safe. But I wasn't protecting them from pain, I was the cause of it. I thought love meant obedience. I thought respect meant silence. That's not love. That's fear." His hands trembled as he spoke. And then, almost to himself, he said, "I failed them. All of them." The crew watched in stunned silence. They'd filmed anger, denial, arrogance, but never this. Never remorse that looked this real. Later, during the confessional session, one producer asked him quietly, "Kody, if you could say one thing to each of your wives now, what would it be?" He looked up, eyes glistening. "To Christine, I'd say thank you. For leaving. Because you made me face the truth I never wanted to see. To Janelle, I'd say I'm sorry. You were my partner, and I treated you like an assistant. To Meri, I'd say I was cruel. I kept you waiting for a love I no longer had, and that was wrong." He paused for a long time before whispering, "And to Robyn, I'd say, I know you're tired. And I don't blame you." That final confession hung heavy in the air. For the first time, Kody wasn't trying to defend or justify his actions. He was simply acknowledging the wreckage he'd caused. After the cameras cut, he didn't move for a while. He just sat there, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. The director quietly said, "That was powerful, Kody." He shook his head. "No," he said softly. "It was overdue." When that footage reached the editing bay, producers reportedly debated whether to air it. Some thought it was too dark, too raw. Others argued it was exactly what the audience needed to see, the fall of a man who'd once believed he was untouchable. In the end, TLC made a decision to air part of it, but not all. The version that reached viewers showed tears, but not the full confession. Not the moment when Kody said, "I failed them all." That part, they said, was too painful. Off camera, Robyn confronted him about it days later. She told him, "You can't fix the past by crying about it." He nodded, but didn't argue. She continued, her voice trembling, "If you really want to change, stop talking about pain like it's punishment. Start doing something." But the problem was, Kody didn't know how. He'd spent decades being the man with all the answers. Now, stripped of everything, his faith, his wives, his authority, he was just a man searching for meaning. One evening, Janelle's son Logan reached out. Not to reconcile, but to check in. "Dad," he said, "I saw the episode. I'm glad you're finally saying what we've all known. It's a start." Kody didn't respond right away. He just said, "I hope it's not too late." Logan sighed. "It's never too late to say sorry. But it's too late to keep doing the same thing." Then he hung up. For a long time after that call, Kody sat quietly. And for the first time in years, he didn't feel angry. He just felt small. Human. When the next filming day came, he asked the crew to record outside. He wanted the mountains in the background. As the camera rolled, he said something simple but profound, "This land used to represent hope. Now, it's just a reminder. And maybe that's okay. Maybe it's supposed to remind me of what I destroyed, so I don't ever do it again." The wind caught his words and carried them into the still air. It wasn't a speech. It wasn't a sermon. It was a man finally facing the cost of his choices. That scene, quiet, humble, stripped of ego, marked the first real moment of peace in years. For the audience, it was a glimpse of the man behind the chaos. And for Kody Brown, it was the first step towards something that had eluded him for far too long: forgiveness. Not from others. From himself. When episode 6 aired, the one where Kody finally broke down on camera, the internet exploded. Clips of his tears spread across social media, with fans debating whether they were real or another act. But what mattered most wasn't the public reaction. It was how the family reacted, the women who had lived that pain long before the cameras captured it. Christine was the first to see it. She didn't watch the episode live. She waited until the next morning, sitting on her couch with a cup of coffee, her husband David beside her. "I wasn't sure if I wanted to see it," she admitted later. "Because I've seen him cry before. But I knew this time it would feel different." As the episode played, Christine stayed quiet. David reached for her hand when Kody said the words, "I failed them all." Her eyes welled up, but not from sympathy. It was something closer to release. When it ended, she exhaled deeply and said softly, "That's the first honest thing he said in 10 years. She didn't mean it cruelly. It was simply truth." Christine later told friends that she wasn't angry watching Kody cry. She actually felt sorry for him, but in a distant, detached way. "It's like watching a house you used to live in burn down," she said. "You don't feel the heat anymore. You just remember that once, it was yours." Janelle's reaction was quieter but heavier. She watched alone, late at night, after everyone had gone to bed. Her son Garrison's photo sat on the shelf beside the TV. When Kody's face filled the screen, trembling, apologizing, Janelle whispered to the room, "Where was this man when our kids needed him?" She wiped away a tear before it could fall. Because for Janelle, it wasn't about forgiveness, it was about timing. All the apologies in the world couldn't erase the years when Kody wasn't there, when she'd handled the family's burdens alone, when the kids had stopped calling him dad, when she'd cried herself to sleep wondering how to fix a marriage that had long since broken. Later, she confided to a close friend, "I'm glad he's facing it." But I'm not celebrating it. Growth doesn't undo damage. It just proves you finally noticed. Still, Janelle didn't lash out publicly. She didn't post online. She just carried the moment quietly, the way she always had. Then there was Meri. Meri's reaction caught even her closest friends off guard. She watched the episode in her small Utah home, sitting near the window that overlooked the mountains. When Kody said, "I was cruel. I kept you waiting for love I no longer had," Meri froze. Her face didn't move, but her eyes filled with tears that stayed unshed. She later admitted to a producer in an off-camera interview, "That line, that one sentence, that's the thing I needed to hear 10 years ago. Not now." She wasn't angry, just profoundly sad. Because for Meri, that apology arrived like a letter sent to the wrong address years too late. After the episode ended, she sat in silence for a long time before whispering, "He's grieving something he destroyed with his own hands." It wasn't bitterness. It was observation. Meri had already made peace with leaving. But hearing him finally acknowledge her pain reopened a wound she thought had healed. Meanwhile, Robyn couldn't even finish watching. She'd lived that moment in real time, the filming, the breakdown, the aftermath. Seeing it edited, with dramatic music and fan commentary online, made her sick to her stomach. "He was broken," she said in a phone call with a friend. "People see tears, but they don't know how deep it goes. He's been living with regret every single day." Still, even she couldn't deny the shift between them. The breakdown had brought no closure. If anything, it had widened the space between them, two people living in the same house, haunted by the ghosts of a family that no longer existed. After the episode aired, the family's group chat, long dormant, mostly silent, lit up for the first time in months. Gwendolyn sent a link to a meme about the show. "Dad's crying tour continues," she joked. Michael T responded with a sad emoji. Then, surprisingly, Janelle wrote, "He's hurting. Doesn't mean he's healed." No one argued. Christine simply replied, "True." And for a moment, just a brief, fleeting moment, they all shared something that hadn't existed between them in years, acknowledgement. The next day, TLC executives reached out to the family to gauge their willingness to film a follow-up reaction special. Christine declined immediately. Janelle said she'd think about it. Meri, though, surprised everyone. She said yes. When producers asked why, she explained quietly, "Because I want him to see that we all survived. Even him." That line became the heart of the upcoming special. When the reunion filming began, Kody entered the studio first. He looked nervous, holding his usual coffee cup like a shield. Then Meri walked in. For a moment, he looked startled. They hadn't been in the same room for almost a year. "Meri," he said softly. She nodded, her expression calm. "I saw the episode," she said. He swallowed hard. "And?" Meri sighed. "You finally said the words. I just wish you'd said them while I was still listening." The room went still. Kody blinked rapidly, trying to hold himself together. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I know," she replied. "That's enough." Then she smiled, a soft, sad smile, and took her seat. It wasn't reconciliation. It was acceptance. Later, Christine and Janelle filmed their parts separately, each offering their own reflections. Christine said, "Maybe this is what healing looks like, not getting back together, but finally telling the truth." And Janelle added, "We're not enemies. We're just done pretending we were ever on the same page." Their words, honest and grounded, framed the episode's closing scene. Kody watched their interviews later in the editing room, his hands folded, his face pale. When Christine's words echoed, finally telling the truth, he whispered to himself, "I wish I'd done it sooner." By the end of that week, something unexpected happened. The ratings for that episode, the breakdown, the confession, the reactions, were the highest in years. But for once, that didn't seem to matter to anyone in the family. Christine was baking cookies with her grandkids. Janelle was visiting her children in North Carolina. Meri was working on her bed and breakfast. And Robyn. Robyn was just trying to make dinner in silence, hoping the cameras wouldn't come back anytime soon. Because this time, it wasn't about the show. It was about the truth finally finding its way out, even if it took too long to get there. When Kody Brown's breakdown episode aired, the internet didn't just react, it erupted. Within hours, hashtags like hashtag Kody Breakdown, hashtag SisterWivesTruth, and hashtag Tears of Regret were trending across multiple platforms. Clips of his trembling voice, his tearful confession, and his shaky apology spread faster than anything TLC had released in years. But what surprised everyone, even the network, wasn't just how far it reached. It was how divided the reaction became. Older fans, especially those who had followed the show since its early days in 2010, saw the episode as a sad but necessary moment. They filled Facebook groups with sympathetic posts, "Say what you want about Kody, but that man is broken. You can see the pain in his eyes. That's not acting." Many longtime viewers, parents, grandparents, said it reminded them of how family can slip away when pride gets in the way. Some even admitted they cried. "You get older and realize, nobody wins in a family fight," one fan wrote. "I just hope he finds peace before it's too late." But younger fans, the TikTok crowd, weren't so forgiving. They dissected every facial twitch, every sniffle, every word that sounded too rehearsed. One viral clip zoomed in on Kody wiping a tear and titled it, "Is he crying or calculating?" The comments were brutal. "He's crying because his control is gone. This isn't guilt. It's performance. Kody's tears are 2 seasons too late." For every person offering sympathy, there were 10 more calling him manipulative, self-centered, or worse, a man who finally had to live in the mess he made. TLC's YouTube uploads of the episode received hundreds of thousands of comments. Most began the same way, "I used to defend him, but not anymore." People shared personal stories, too, mothers who'd left difficult marriages, children estranged from parents who never said sorry until it was too late. The show had stopped being just entertainment. It had become a mirror. And Kody's confession, the words "I failed them all," became something bigger than just one man's regret. It became a conversation about fatherhood, pride, and the cost of putting ego before empathy. News outlets picked it up next. Entertainment Tonight, People magazine, and even the Washington Post ran headlines about Kody Brown's emotional collapse. Some praised his honesty. Others questioned his motives. But the one thing everyone agreed on was this: for the first time in years, sister wives felt real again. No staged family dinners. No awkward attempts to pretend unity. Just raw, unfiltered pain, the kind you can't script. Producers at TLC reportedly received hundreds of letters and emails from viewers thanking them for showing it. One letter read, "That episode made me call my son after 5 years. If Kody can admit his mistakes, maybe I can too." It was powerful. Unexpected. And, for once, deeply human. Yet, behind the scenes, not everyone was celebrating. According to sources close to production, the network faced a dilemma. The ratings were phenomenal, the highest since Christine's exit. But they also knew they'd crossed a line. For years, TLC had leaned on drama to drive the show: arguments, divorces, public confrontations. Now, they'd filmed something that wasn't just dramatic, it was spiritually heavy. One producer reportedly said, "It stopped being a show about plural marriage and became a show about human breakdown." It's haunting. Even the editors struggled with the footage. One confided anonymously, "We didn't know where to cut." You can't edit honesty without losing the weight of it. But you also can't air everything. Some of it was too raw. Meanwhile, Christine and Janelle's followers, fiercely loyal fans, began defending them online with renewed passion. They posted side-by-side clips, Kody crying on camera, versus the wives holding it together through years of quiet pain. The captions were brutal, "They cried off camera for a decade. Now it's his turn." Facebook fan groups exploded with debates over who was truly to blame. Some said Kody's confession was the beginning of redemption. Others called it too little, too late. A viral Reddit thread summed up the divide perfectly: "It's not that we don't believe he's sad. It's that we know why he's sad. He's not mourning his family. He's mourning his image." That comment alone got over 40,000 upvotes. TLC, of course, saw the numbers. Behind the scenes, executives were already in meetings, planning the next big special, Kody Brown, The Reckoning. It would be a sit-down, one-on-one reflection filmed after the dust settled, a deeper dive into his mindset, faith, and future. The idea was simple: if the audience was captivated by his fall, they'd be even more hooked watching him rebuild. But Kody wasn't sure. He told producers, "I don't know if I can keep doing this. Every time I think I've said enough, the world wants more of my shame." Still, he agreed, reluctantly, knowing that the show was both his punishment and his paycheck. Robyn's reaction to the online storm was painful to watch. She withdrew completely from social media, deleting her accounts and refusing interviews. In private, she told a close friend, "They don't see the man I see at home. He's broken, yes, but he's not evil." They're turning his tears into memes. It hurt her deeply, not just as his wife, but as the only person still standing beside him. In one tense off-camera exchange, she told producers, "If this is what honesty costs, I'm not sure it's worth it." But even she couldn't stop what was happening. The public had already made their judgment. Meanwhile, Christine quietly turned the chaos into opportunity. She posted a short video on Instagram, smiling, surrounded by her kids, baking in her kitchen. Her caption read, "Peace is not the absence of pain. It's the choice to stop letting pain lead you." The post went viral. Within hours, thousands commented things like, "This is what healing looks like," and Christine won the whole show by walking away. It was the contrast the audience didn't miss. While Kody's story was about breakdown, Christine's was about breakthrough. As days passed, the storm calmed, but the impact didn't. Kody's breakdown became a cultural moment within reality TV. Psychologists even discussed it in podcasts, analyzing how patriarchal control often collapses under emotional isolation. One therapist said, "Kody's tears aren't weakness. They're delayed accountability." But accountability doesn't always lead to redemption. That line struck a chord across social platforms. Fans repeated it again and again. Delayed accountability. That became the phrase that defined Kody Brown's legacy. By the end of that month, Kody had gone completely silent online. No statements, no posts, no appearances. He stayed inside his Flagstaff home, while Robyn reportedly convinced TLC to pause filming for a few weeks. They needed time. But time doesn't stop public opinion. And online, one truth became clearer than ever. The world that once cheered for Kody Brown was now watching the consequences of his choices, in real time. Some with pity. Some with anger. But almost all with the same thought, it didn't have to end like this. By the time the fallout from Kody's breakdown settled, Robyn Brown was a ghost of her former self. The woman who once spoke softly about faith and family, the one who smiled through conflict and defended her husband at every turn, now moved through their Flagstaff home in near silence. The laughter that once echoed through the halls was gone. The house, large and beautiful, felt like a monument to everything they'd lost. Kody spent most of his days outside, pacing the yard or staring out over the mountains. Robyn stayed indoors, caring for the younger kids, holding the pieces of what was left of their life together. But the truth was impossible to ignore anymore. They weren't partners fighting the world. They were two people quietly drowning in it. It started subtly. Robyn stopped sitting beside Kody during interviews. She began turning down producer requests to share her perspective. Even her tone changed. When she did speak, her words carried a heaviness that hadn't been there before. "People think I'm defending him," she said in one unaired clip. "I'm not defending him anymore. I'm just tired." That word, tired, said more than any long explanation ever could. Tired of the constant online attacks. Tired of being painted as the villain. Tired of holding together a marriage that felt more like duty than love. The fans noticed it instantly. They called it the Robyn shift, the moment her eyes stopped lighting up when she spoke about Kody. One evening in late January, the couple sat down for what was supposed to be a quiet dinner. The cameras weren't there. No producers. No scripts. Just the two of them, and years of unspoken truth hanging in the air. Kody had barely eaten in days. He pushed his plate away and said softly, "I don't know how to fix this anymore." Robyn looked at him, really looked at him, and for a moment, she saw the man she'd fallen in love with. The man who promised family unity, who spoke of faith and forever. But that man was gone. All that remained was a man broken by the weight of his own decisions. She set her fork down and whispered, "Maybe we stop trying to fix it." Kody blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" "I mean maybe it's not something that can be fixed," she said, her voice steady but trembling underneath. Maybe what's broken isn't the family, or the show, or the faith, maybe it's us. For the first time, Kody didn't argue. He didn't defend. He didn't rage. He just sat there, hands folded, staring at the table. The silence stretched so long that even the ticking clock on the wall seemed loud. Finally, Robyn continued. I tried so hard to be what everyone needed me to be, the peacemaker, the understanding wife, the glue. But glue can't hold together pieces that keep falling apart. Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't cry. She'd cried too many times before. I kept believing if I loved you enough, it would make you better. But it's not love that fixes people, Kody. It's truth. That night, Robyn moved into the guest bedroom. There was no shouting. No grand announcement. Just quiet acceptance. In the days that followed, Kody barely spoke. He tried to act normal, helping with breakfast, checking on the kids, doing small chores, but the rhythm of their home had changed. They moved around each other like ghosts. At night, Kody would sit in his recliner, staring at old family photos. The house in Las Vegas. The weddings. The smiling kids. He'd trace the faces with his fingers and whisper, "Where did we go wrong?" Robyn would pass by in silence, her footsteps soft on the carpet. Sometimes she'd pause in the doorway, wanting to say something, but the words never came. Because what could she say? They both already knew. Behind the scenes, TLC executives were in a panic. Word had leaked that Robyn had moved out of the shared bedroom, and the tabloids ran with it. Robyn leaves Kody? Brown household in crisis. Paparazzi began showing up near their property again. Neighbors reported seeing camera trucks parked outside late at night. TLC wanted to film the tension, the unraveling of the last marriage standing, but Robyn refused. She sent an email to the producers saying, "If this is what you want from me, I'm done." The network begged her to reconsider. They promised sensitivity, privacy, control over the edit. But Robyn didn't respond. She'd reached her breaking point, not as a reality star, not as a wife, but as a woman who couldn't keep carrying the weight of someone else's redemption arc. Friends close to the family later shared that Robyn had begun therapy. Something she had resisted for years. In one private session, she reportedly admitted, "I don't think I was ever just his wife. I was his audience." Those words echoed the same truth the fans had been saying for years. Her role had never been equal partnership. It was emotional caretaker, the one who absorbed his moods, softened his image, and carried his guilt. But no one can hold that role forever. Meanwhile, Christine found out about Robyn's move through one of the older kids. Her response was short, but not cruel. "She's finally learning what we all learned. You can't fix Kody. You can only free yourself from him." Janelle agreed. Meri said nothing, she didn't have to. Even the fans who once despised Robyn began to soften. They saw in her the same exhaustion they'd seen in the other wives before they left. Maybe, one fan wrote online, "She's realizing she's just another chapter in his story, not the ending." In mid-February, Kody tried to film a new confessional. But this time, something had changed in his voice. He didn't sound angry. He sounded empty. He looked into the camera and said quietly, "She's pulling away from me. And I can't stop it. I can't fix it. Maybe this is what it feels like to be on the other side." For the first time, he understood what Christine must have felt the day she walked out that door. He understood what Meri had endured, waiting for years for a man who had already left her in spirit. And he understood why Janelle stopped trying to mediate. The irony wasn't lost on him. He had built his life on plural love, and in the end, every love had left him. By spring, Robyn and Kody's separation had quietly become a reality. Not a legal one, not yet. But emotional. Spiritual. Final in all the ways that matter most. And when the producers asked if they'd appear together again, Robyn said, "Maybe someday. But not like this. Not when it still hurts to breathe." For fans, it marked the end of an era. The last wife standing had finally stopped standing. But for Robyn Brown, it wasn't just an ending. It was the beginning of rediscovery, of learning who she was when she wasn't Kody's wife. And for the first time in years, she could wake up, walk through her own home, and not feel like she had to perform. By the time spring rolled around, the Brown family's story had shifted from reality television to living history. What had started as an experiment in love and faith was now a cautionary tale, one that millions of viewers had grown up watching unfold in real time. The family wasn't what it used to be. The once crowded holidays, the shared meals, the laughter of children under one roof, those memories now belonged to another lifetime. But the lessons, those remained. When TLC first aired Sister Wives in 2010, it promised viewers a glimpse into a unique lifestyle, a family built on the principle of plural marriage. But over 15 years later, what audiences were left with was something far more universal: the anatomy of love, faith, and heartbreak. The latest footage showed an older, wearier Kody Brown, no longer the confident patriarch with a booming laugh, but a man reflecting on what it means to lose everything you built in pursuit of something that could never last. In one of his final confessionals, Kody said quietly, "You think when you're leading a family, you're protecting everyone. But sometimes, you're just protecting yourself from the truth." His voice broke halfway through. The camera didn't cut away. For once, there were no excuses. No theology. No justifications. Just regret, heavy, human, and unfiltered. Christine watched that final interview from her new home in Utah. Her husband, David, sat beside her, silent. When it ended, she nodded slowly and said, "That's the man I kept hoping to see. I just wish he'd arrived sooner." Then she smiled faintly, turned off the TV, and went back to decorating cookies with her grandkids. For Christine, life had already moved on, quietly, joyfully. Her chapter in Kody's book had ended, but her story was still being written. Janelle, ever the pragmatist, chose peace over nostalgia. When asked during an online Q&A if she would ever return to Sister Wives, she said, "The story's told. What's left now is life, and life doesn't need a camera to be real." She'd bought a small property in North Carolina near her daughter Madison, where the air was calm and her phone didn't buzz with production calls. She spent her mornings gardening, her afternoons with her grandkids, and her evenings reading novels on the porch. Every so often, she'd check social media and see fans asking if she missed it: the cameras, the fame, the family. Her reply was always the same: "I miss the idea of family. But not the version we became." Meri had also found her rhythm. Her Utah bed and breakfast was thriving. Guests often came not just to stay, but to talk, to ask her how she'd found strength after heartbreak. One evening, during a podcast interview, she was asked what she'd say to her younger self, the woman who once waited years for Kody to love her again. She paused, smiled, and said, "I'd tell her, you're not hard to love. You just kept asking the wrong person to see it." That quote went viral, and for good reason. It was the kind of wisdom that comes not from bitterness, but from surviving it. As for Robyn, the woman who once embodied loyalty and faith, her story was still being written, too. After months of silence, she reappeared in a quiet interview filmed not by TLC, but by a close family friend. Her face was pale but peaceful. "I don't regret loving him," she said softly. "I regret thinking love was supposed to save him." She spoke about motherhood, about her children's confusion, about learning how to live without being the shield for someone else's storm. When asked if she and Kody were still together, she hesitated, then said, "We're in the same story, just on different pages." That one sentence said everything the tabloids had been guessing for months. Kody himself had retreated from public life. He stopped doing interviews. He turned down podcast invitations. The once proud leader of a plural family now lived quietly, rarely leaving his Flagstaff home except for church or the grocery store. Neighbors occasionally spotted him walking alone, head down, wearing the same old leather jacket fans had seen him in for years. Those who did speak to him described him as polite, reflective, but distant. One local said, "He's a man who finally ran out of words." And maybe that's what he needed all along. By late summer, TLC released a short statement: "The Sister Wives story has always been about family, faith, and change. As the Browns enter a new chapter, we honor the journey that has touched millions around the world." It wasn't confirmation that the series was ending, but fans read between the lines. After 20 seasons, Sister Wives had reached its final bow. And for many, that felt right. The story that began with hope had ended with honesty. And that's what made it powerful. In the months that followed, something beautiful happened online. The tone of the fanbase changed. The anger, the sarcasm, the endless memes, they softened. People began sharing lessons instead of gossip. One fan wrote, "I started watching for drama. I ended up learning about forgiveness." Another added, "Christine taught me when to leave. Janelle taught me how to stay strong. Meri taught me how to rebuild. And Robyn, she taught me what it costs to hold on too long." Those words captured the heart of it all. The sister-wives story wasn't about plural marriage anymore. It was about the universal truths that outlive every relationship. Love doesn't always look like loyalty. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. And healing doesn't happen on camera, it happens in silence. Kody's tears may have been the turning point, but the real power lay in the women who walked away and learned how to live again. On a quiet evening months later, Robyn was seen sitting outside her Flagstaff home. Her youngest child played nearby, laughter echoing into the night. She looked up at the sky, exhaled, and whispered something only the wind could hear. Maybe it was a prayer. Maybe it was goodbye. But whatever it was peace. And after 15 years of television, heartbreak, and hard lessons, that's all any of them had ever really wanted.